Chinese scientists claim to have created the world's first light-based quantum computer which can solve problems for faster than a classical supercomputer. Not any average computer, mind you, a supercomputer. An advance hailed by experts as a major achievement that provides fundamentally different approach to designing such powerful machine. As per a Chinese media outlet, Zhujiang, the quantum computer can reliably demonstrate quantum computational advantage, a milestone in computing, they say. China's official news agency claimed that the computer was 10 billion times faster than Google's Sycamore machine, which was launched just last year. The research also claimed that the prototype was 100 trillion times faster than Japan's Fukagu supercomputer, launched in June and widely held to be the fastest computer in the world. The US and China have both funneled billions into the technology, and Beijing has also made huge investments in space exploration alongside Russia. Experts fear China will use the technological supremacy for global domination. Well, that is not something which we have heard for the first time, especially in 2020. What does this mean for the world? A world which is already perhaps perturbed by the way China has been behaving. Is there new computer going to make them extra formidable than they already are? Let's talk about that. Vice Admiral Shekhar Sinha, former Chief Integrated Defence Staff, Western Naval Command, joins us on the broadcast. Jaydev Ranade, member of the National Security Advisory Board, the NSAB, President, Center for China Analysis and Strategy. Sanjay Kapoor, editor Hard News, foreign affairs journalist, also with us on the program. Joyita Basu, editor of the Sunday Guardian, is also joining us for this very important discussion. Mr. Ranade, let me come to you first. Well, to refresh everyone's memory, Mr. Ranade, China just landed on the moon just a couple of days back, and it was a successful landing. They're on their way back, and obviously the world is not drumbeating about it because everybody is so peeved with China at this point in time. Now they're talking about this computer, which is perhaps unprecedented technology, which the world has only spoken of. We have seen it in perhaps movies like The Matrix and whatnot too, but now China has made it. What does this make China today? Are they a bigger threat if they are to be believed?
One of the key ambitions of China is to overtake the United States or rival the United States. And they have identified high technology as the manner in which they would do it, in the manner in which they would achieve their ambition of becoming number one in the world. So they've been focused on that. They pumped a lot of money into it. And after the US-China trade war started, that has assumed an even higher priority. In fact, when they announced their Made in China 2025 program, which was to bring them to the level of the most advanced countries in the world, United States identified that as the prime target, and which has to be, shall I say, disabled or hobbled. And they began systematically working on it, which has, to my mind at least, set back China's efforts by at least 5 to 10 years. We've seen what's happened to ZTE and Huawei. But having said this, let us also say that China has not exactly just accepted what the US is doing. They have reacted, and they have put in more money, they've put in more effort. They've come up with new designs like civil-military fusion, in which the results of the civil industry and military industry in high technologies merge together in order to take them forward. They have already got, just for your information, the maximum number of fast supercomputers, faster than the others in China. They have got the world's, the number of factories using robotics in China is the highest in the world. So they are moving towards technology. They're quite conscious. This Chang'e landing, which you just referred to, puts them in the number 3 spot in the world, with just United States, Russia, and then them. And now they have been working on the quantum for a while, but they've been looking at it primarily from the point of view of quantum computers or quantum communications. And since we have Admiral Sinha here, he would understand that with quantum communications, it means you've got a virtually unbreakable communication system, untappable communication system, and very fast. So if they're working on that, I don't suppose that a quantum computer would be too far behind. Whether they've actually achieved it or not, I think we'll have to see some kind of evidence, some kind of proof, because the Chinese do put out exaggerated claims And in this particular case, they could be doing it just to tease the Americans and say in a manner that despite Trump's efforts, they're still progressing. So let's wait and see. I think some evidence they will have to produce and show that they've actually made it. But if they have, it is certainly a major step forward.
Right, Admiral Sinha, the Chinese perhaps could be exaggerating this. In your opinion, is this possible in history? In fact, there is a precedent which is similar to that the Apollo never landed on the moon. Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin were in fact were in a Los Angeles studio being shot by Stanley Kubrick, but that was enough for Russia to take the bait and waste billions of dollars in their own space program, eventually resultingly making them bankrupt.
Two different things. It was SDI.
Admiral Sinha?
Yeah, thank you, Vinit, for getting me here on this program and with such, highly professional people, my co-panelists. What Mr. Ranade said was absolutely right. The lab trials have been going on since I occasionally visit Chandu. In Sichuan University, the research in the Department of Communication is on. In my last visit, they said they were very close to have a breakthrough. But the biggest advantage is that it cuts down the time it takes for the sound to travel. Like say you want to do a satellite communication, you're transmitting from a ship or land or somewhere, and it is sort of putting it down, beaming it down onto some other platform. There is a lag. There is always a lag because sound takes time to travel. But with quantum computing, these two things will be removed. Number one. Secondly, right now, the downlink of most of the communication equipment and the satellites and data satellites, to some extent even the video satellites who transmit pictures, it is not very easy to sort of intercept it, but it can be intercepted in the downlink time, particularly the communication one. This quantum computing is actually going to make it virtually impossible to tap this communication or data or video in the downlink. Why it is important is particularly for the submarines and ships who are operating quite far from the harbors and some message has to be given, it can virtually be online like we are talking to each other. So it takes away the travel time. So obviously it is traveling faster than the speed of sound. So it's ahead of the speed of sound, and therefore it actually cuts down this timing. So that is number one. You mentioned about this Armstrong, etc. Let's not forget, Vinit, that even Americans do a lot of psyops. And if you go back into the history of First World War and the Second World War, the landing of Normandy is a very famous example. That the landing of the tank fleet, the tanks were done somewhere else. And all the indications were that it is heading in some other direction. We do that very often. We have to do this because I remember that in one of our missile firing exercises at sea, we were quite surprised that every time we did a practice missile firing after so much of effort, because you have to do the range clearance for it, 5-6 aircraft are required, ships are required at the extremities of the range of the missile. And we still found some Chinese fishing boat every time. So we knew that somebody is sort of hacking somewhere our system and our program is getting compromised. So we played a trick. When I became a fleet commander, I said let's play a trick, because fleet operation officer I had seen this firsthand. What we did was we actually didn't issue a program. We just issued a program of sailing out normal fleet exercise. And in the fleet exercise, at some stage, we said that, the further action will be taken and the message will be conveyed by hand of helicopter pilot to all ships. So we actually sealed the rest of the program, cancelling the previous program, and we dropped it by helicopter to some 18 to 20 ships. Okay, 2-3 helicopters. And they opened it, and first thing they said, no communication, only data communication.
Okay.
So they peeled off to their respective directions. And finally, we did a missile firing unit. There was not even a single Chinese fishing boat or the Pakistani boat. So I think that psyops, it is quite possible that Americans will also do it. All effort will be made to, for China to go bankrupt if at all they can.
Okay.
But the attempts will be always made.
Okay. Sanjay Kapoor, if this is indeed a smoke screen, let us say for one instant that this is a smoke screen which is being put out by China to the world. As is, it is very difficult to figure out what's going on in China, and with this technology, it's going to be even more difficult. In fact, it's going to be virtually impossible to figure out whatever the Chinese are doing, especially when it comes to defense and offense tactics. How should the world respond? Should we just brush this off as another propaganda tactic by China, or is this supposed to be taken seriously?
I don't think the West would not be cognizant of what the Chinese are doing. I think there is too much of, you can say interaction that takes place at different levels in terms of sourcing of certain technology. Without semiconductor, the Chinese communication side cannot do much of the work. So it's not that the Americans or the West would not know what the Chinese are up to. And this particular announcement may have surprised us, because everything that China does surprises us. And that is our failing. It's not that we should be running down the Chinese achievement. But when it comes to the West, they would be keeping tabs. They would have their, you can say, listening post there to figure out what they are doing. And, you must understand the reason why they were trying to block Huawei, besides many things, including the backdoor that they said was used for stealing data from different countries, was also the fear that it was dominating the world in terms of 5G in such rapidity. Like you had countries like England and Germany would look the American president in the eye and say that, why do you want to deny us the 5G? Because if we don't climb on the Huawei bandwagon, we lose out in technology. So the edge would be gone. So similarly, they recognize that there was progress that had been made by the Chinese. And if the world wanted to catch up, you have to go with a certain kind of technology. So here again, I mean, if they are announcing that there have been a quantum computing which has come into it with amazing speed, as Admiral Saab and my I respected Jaidev Ranade Saab has said. We must recognize that there is certain kind of commitment and resolve within the Chinese system which is driving them towards this kind of excellence. And till then, we will be making ourselves, you can say, we'll be fooling ourselves if we think that they have not done. We must also know that the Chinese operate within a certain kind of framework, and that is how to dominate. And for them to dominate, they have a concept of who and when is knowledge. They are always trying to acquire as much knowledge as possible, because they have such great reverence for the written word and for acquiring knowledge. And it all shows up. And if we do not recognize it, we'll be hurt.
Okay, Joyita, if we do not recognize it, we will be hurt. Well, we already hurt. Not only us, but the entire world is hurt because, we really did not comprehend China at the level they have been operating. This framework has to be understood before we respond to such news, about a supercomputer coming into the realm of, world domination.
This is, in fact, 100 trillion times faster than the fastest supercomputer. This is something that we cannot even think of something like this. And we are talking in terms of something which is 1 million times processing power of all the computers put together. So think of what exactly they are claiming. Even if they have been able to achieve even 5%, 10%, or whatever percent of what they are claiming, it is unimaginable. Now, and you see, in terms of budgeting, if you look at it, I did do a little bit of research, and it seems China is spending $10 billion in 3 years, which is 13 times more than what the US is spending in quantum computing. So you can imagine how the kind of seriousness that China is putting into this field. And the problem is, you see, and in terms of science and in terms of technology, this area opens, there can be huge breakthroughs in terms of complex science and engineering problems can be solved. Because when you're talking about quantum computing, you can actually send sunlight from one particular area to a where there is an excessive sunlight to a sunlight deficient area. That you can manipulate weather, you can handle weather, you can, in terms of medicine, huge breakthroughs. In terms of defense, huge breakthroughs. Now the problem is that, you see, the positive side and the negative side. how will China misuse this? Because the way China is, as I mentioned in an earlier program, the nature of it all depends on the nature of the beast. China wants to see the rest of the world in its characteristics. So in what ways will China misuse this? And especially, they are very clear. In fact, the people who are heading their quantum computing, they are talking about what we are ultimately wanting to achieve, what we are ultimately trying to find out is how the brain works, how our mind works, how we are trying to go into the origin of consciousness. Think of what happens if they can get into it. This is science fiction territory, and this can get scary when especially the power is China.
Absolutely. Well articulated, Joyita. This is a science fiction territory. What are the impacts and how deep does this breakthrough go? We'll have to talk about this. Mr. Ranade, if this is something to be believed, then, we are in fact far behind when it comes to advancements in technology. But at the same time, let us not forget that China is the same country that just a few days back accused India of starting the coronavirus. So, are we supposed to take this with a pinch of salt, or are we supposed to dismiss it, like another loony development from Beijing?
In a way, I'm glad you put this question in this, frame, because there are two distinct things that that China is trying to do, which in your sentence you, in a way, covered. The first, which I'll pick up, is this thing about accusing or saying that the coronavirus came from India. That's being done with a deliberate effort to diffuse the anti-China sentiment globally. They're trying to confuse the story, they're trying to confuse the original charges and try and get China off the hook. So they have said that it has come from the United States. They've said that US soldiers came to Wuhan and they spread it. They've said that it has come from India. So there are stories like this in order to defuse the anti-China sentiment, which is setting them back and which is causing them a lot of concern. Because they know that as the world pulls out of the pandemic, and now there are hopeful signs, as the world pulls out of it, then this sentiment is going to come to the fore and it's going to impact on China. That's one point. The second is about this quantum computer or whatever. There, I think we should broaden the field and look at technology itself. The manner in which the Chinese have identified key areas of technology that they need to focus on, and technology is a broader subject. They have certainly started looking at it. And here, just to sort of give an example, they've seem to have taken, and I'm picking up on what Joyita said, they seem to have taken a leaf out of the American playbook. The Americans, as you know, have hired Bollywood scriptwriters to just give them various scenarios of what could happen either in geopolitics or in innovations. And then they start looking at it and seeing whether it's feasible. The Chinese are doing the same. And I remember some time ago, they had a conference of scientists. Now they've had quite a few after that on harnessing the sun's energy, solar energy, for use on Earth, because they say that sources of power are dwindling, and how do we go about it? Now they've got certain, stumbling blocks there. One of them being, as they said, is that we are able to channel the sun's energy, but on the way down, it will burn up everything that it comes across. So how do we tackle that? So these are the kind of things that they're looking at. So it looks like science fiction, but you work at a project long enough, you throw enough brain power and money into it, and chances are that you might even get something. Like we have these vaccines for coronavirus, they've come out in a rapid, quick time. Look at the amount of technology, the brain power, the money thrown into that effort, and we've got probably the fastest developed vaccine so far. So things can happen, and I think we look at two things particularly here. The manner in which they're going after this technology, where we cannot imagine. I think there was a reference to manipulating how we think. Well, I don't know whether they've gone that far. That is one of their ambitions. I think, again, they've picked that up from the US, which wants to manufacture soldiers who can continue to function on the battlefield no matter how badly injured they are. They've made some progress already. But I think the Chinese have picked that up They study the United States very closely. They're trying to see what they can do. But as far as AI is concerned, they have already got labs which are working on ethnic dimensions. In other words, they are trying to pick up whatever data they can, which is what makes their apps and their communications networks so dangerous or lethal. They're trying to pick up data and segregate that data in AI so that they can forecast how, for example, an Indian or a Russian or an American will behave in times of war or in times of crisis. What will be the manner in which they will think so that they can anticipate them. What we at a lower level do in form of war games, they'll be doing using very high technology for that. And within that, they are now started looking at groups, shall I say communities within that. So for example, in India, you'll be looking at how a Bengali will think, how a Punjabi will think, how a Tamilian will think, and how they will react, how they will respond. These are very, in a way, very dangerous, technologies to have for a malevolent power.
Okay.
For a benign power, yes, they can be used for medicine, etc. But I think, the Chinese have entered a kind of territory which gives us all a lot of warning, particularly when we haven't yet settled on how exactly and why the coronavirus has really spread the way it has.
Absolutely. So basically what China wants, Admiral Sinha, is that, there should be a dystopian non-China world with the zombies screaming, "Hail she." But at the same time, Admiral Sinha, a lot of us were not around when, the core of the Cold War, was in fact ongoing. But this time around, it seems that we are also getting a glimpse of what actually a Cold War between two superpower countries feels like. There could be false propaganda from either side, and perhaps this is nothing more than that.
True. If you draw similes, yes, there's no doubt about that. Except that during the actual Cold War, it was it were two blocks of nations. One was the Soviet bloc and one was the American bloc. And each bloc had large number of countries within it, and they were all doing researches of various kinds, and there was some help. But here, the big difference with the present Cold War is that America and the rest of the democracies are probably on one side, and China alone, which is an authoritarian regime, is on the other side. Now, biggest worry, Vineet, is this is called the manipulation technology. So you go to the extent of manipulating the minds of people, like Joyita was saying.
Correct.
It is true. It is true that they can manipulation. For example, Mr. Ranade was talking about the vaccines and where have they gone? The word which is getting around, which is, I think is true. Yesterday there was a webinar which I couldn't join. It was by the medical professionals. And normally what happens, the messages are conveyed from inside the body, and the genes which convey the messages, within the gene there is DNA and RNA, and the RNA has got an RNA messenger. If you have to correct some of the RNAs, then RNA messenger takes this message from somewhere in the body and it goes to the RNA, and then in one of the strands of the RNA it does the correction, right?
Okay.
So this is what is happening in the vaccines. The China vaccine,
Pfizer one.
The Chinese have also got the Pfizer one. So they're using the RNA messenger to convey this, when the vaccine comes, whatever is the method of sort of killing that or altering the what is called the bonds. They're all chemicals, they're all organic chemicals, and they have various bonds: single bond, double bond, triple bond. So one of the weak bonds of the RNA in the whole body will actually get altered with the vaccine's RNA. So what they're doing is, now RNA messenger was being used only for conveying the message from one place to other.
Right.
But now the Chinese are going to use this, then it will go and lodge itself in the RNA.
Absolutely, sir. We've completely run out of time. Concluding comments from Sanjay Kapoor and Joyita Basu. And in fact, then we're going to wrap up this program. Sanjay, if this is the case that China is pursuing, mind domination through this technology, then anything from China, at least in India, should be unwelcome.
Yeah, it is a very tricky situation, but the fact is that there are ways to take advantage. I mean, this is the directions our scientific community can take. We missed out on much of, our vaccine research did not take into consideration the messenger RNA as something that the Turkish couple in Germany has put it together, and they think there can be a whole range of treatment from cancer and other things that can happen. Even the quantum computing as a direction of research could be an area where India can get into. And because we have some of the sharpest brains, they work very well in the US and other countries.
Right.
And there's no reason with good investment they cannot deliver out here. Chinese are always fascinated by Indian brains. But Chinese have a very malevolent attitude to everything. They link technology with controlling human mind. And the surveillance technology that the world is seeking from them is a case in point. So their entire attitude towards how they run society has to be resisted, but not their technology.
All right.
So, so that is how I look at it.
Okay. Joyita, concluding comments from you, and then we wrap up.
I think there is a scope in terms of what we are talking about, alliance of democracies. We are talking in terms of defense and strategy and perhaps even economy. But this is one area that also has to be looked into, primarily because of the nature, the way China is. It's a malign power. So you have to take it on. You don't know what they will do with the technology. I mean, it doesn't have any value for human life. I mean, see what it did with the coronavirus. And at the same time, let us also not forget, in spite of China being this technological and scientific superpower, it could not control the coronavirus. I mean, it was, clueless. Okay, he may not admit it, but it was clueless. Unless, of course, we go for the theory that it deliberately unleashed it on the world.
Okay, well,
let us also not overestimate China, but let us also be prepared for what China is planning.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.